the Israeli attack in the southern Lebanon in an area. I don't know if it's a town, city, or in a village, Al Mansouri in the southern Lebanon. They attacked, the fighter jets, bombed some areas in that, you know, in that vicinity, in that part of southern Lebanon. Here is, the situation. Yesterday we had the talks between the government in Lebanon and Israelis in Rome, and they're talking about, whenever they come out and they're talking and saying it's positive, it's just moving forward. But at the same time, you see Israelis bombing the southern Lebanon. Yesterday and the day before, we had the attacks on Ali Taher fortress mountain in southern Lebanon as well. What is the situation, Laith, in with ongoing Israeli attacks in the southern part of Lebanon?
Well, this area, Al Mansouri, is a village, and is between Sur or Tyre, the historic city, and the
Which they
Naqoura.
hit. I remember they Sur, because they call it Tir in the West, because in Persian they call it Sur. Yeah, that's
Yes,
the difference. Yeah.
yes.
Go
So
ahead.
Tyre, Sur, and Al Naqoura, the border with Palestine. So this is on the coast of Lebanon in the last 15 kilometers before the border with Palestine. And maybe the viewers would remember there was huge battles there just at the village north of that in Al Qalayli, where the Israelis were positioned, and they withdrew after being bombarded by Hezbollah through the war. So this is an indication of how weak even the current occupation they have of south parts of Lebanon. I think when we talk about these negotiations happening and why would the Israelis do this right now, it's obviously because of the speech of Sheikh Naim al-Qasim, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, yesterday on the Ashura, the Arba'in commemoration. It was yesterday also the commemoration of the explosion of the port in Beirut. This speech by Sheikh Naim al-Qasim targeted these negotiations, spoke about the president and the prime minister, and how what they're doing is not in the interest of the Lebanese people. And he offered, obviously, to coordinate the position, speak between Hezbollah and the government, because up until now, the government hasn't been speaking directly to Hezbollah about these negotiations. And I think so. What we see is basically the Israelis trying to fortify the position of Aoun, the president, and the prime minister Salam, in the face of the position right now of Hezbollah and Sheikh Naim al-Qasim. Yesterday, it was kind of a humiliation, the speech by Sheikh Naim al-Qasim, and we saw the prime minister reply to Sheikh Naim al-Qasim in a tweet, kind of in a confrontational tweet with him. So we can really put it in that context. I don't think there's any military value to the attack they conducted there, because there is no fighting in that area. It is only as a message to Hezbollah and to the people of South Lebanon that the Israelis will, be the police officers on behalf of Joseph Aoun and Nawaf Salam.
Does that mean, are they trying to provoke Hezbollah to attack them? Does that mean, this is the attempt on the part of Israelis to somehow force Hezbollah to attack them?
I don't think so, because Hezbollah is still defending. Every time the Israeli troops move, they get attacked, and they've lost multiple soldiers over the last 2 weeks, the Israelis. Even some of them, we caught them on our own cameras, the injuries being taken out on stretchers. So Hezbollah is not going to be provoked into a fight that it doesn't want to have. especially right now that Hezbollah is looking at the wider regional context of this war. It's all one battle zone from Lebanon to Iran to Yemen. And is what it is interesting for Hezbollah is to try to stop the government from signing on some surrender that will force Hezbollah, of course, and the patriotic forces in Lebanon to confront the president and the prime minister. So this attack is not even about provoking Hezbollah. It's just a threat to the people of South Lebanon, a threat to Hezbollah to tell them that basically the Israeli military will be defending the position of the Vichy regime of Nawaf Salam and Joseph Aoun.
We had a statement on the part of Hezbollah that they're willing, something if it comes the appropriate moment, they're going to talk with the government in Syria as well. They don't have, because it's all about the region, and they see the big picture of the region and whatever they can do to improve the situation. What is that, Laith, and what is the understanding of Hezbollah of the Al Jolani and his people in Syria?
Well, people in Lebanon are, of course, worried about this possible attack by HTS, Al Julani's militias. Hezbollah itself is not scared of this, is not worried, because, for the most part, these threats are a use of a scarecrow of HTS to scare the population of Lebanon, maybe the upper class of Lebanon, to kind of give momentum to the government's negotiations with the Israelis. But I think this statement by Sheikh Naim al-Qasim is not an indication that actually there will be negotiations or that they will be speaking to each other. It's just a message to the population of Lebanon that Hezbollah is ready for these discussions with the Jolani's regime, in order to kind of lessen the worry in the minds of the people that somehow Hezbollah is interested in a fight. Hezbollah doesn't want to have a fight with the HTS at this moment and Al Jolani's regime. So I think a lot of the messages that were sent yesterday in the speech of Sheikh Naim al-Qasim were directed to the population of Lebanon to lift some of the worries in their minds. Will Al Jolani come and speak to Hezbollah? I doubt it. But will also HTS attack Lebanon? I also doubt that. So we have to put all of this in this context. We see the propaganda coming out from the imperialist and the Zionist camp. Much of it is full of just bluster. Even those threats about attacking Iran, we know it's not going to happen. Every day, every couple of days, Trump is threatening to attack Iran. And the Iranian government and the Iranian military knows the military situation of the Americans in the region doesn't allow them to do such an attack. But we still see, for instance, the Iranian government saying, we're still open for negotiations. That is, again, directed to lift some of the worries in the population of Iran. So that's in the same context. This is what's happening here with the speech of Sheikh Naim al-Qasim. And of course, the population in Lebanon today is less worried because of those words coming out from Sheikh Naim al-Qasim.
Laith, we had multiple comments from Israeli officials, Israel Katz. We had Smotrich talking about how they destroyed everything in the southern part of Lebanon. They said that we didn't destroy, we leveled everything. Just, in the way that he mentioned that, it's because they don't want the people to get back to their homes, to their houses. And is that some sort of delusional thinking on the part of Israel, that by destroying these villages, these cities, towns, the people are not going to get back and they're going to stay there forever? What is the understanding on the part of the people in Lebanon and part of Hezbollah?
The history in Lebanon, in Syria, in Palestine is that these villages and towns have been destroyed multiple times, starting with the Crusades. The Crusaders leveled a lot of these cities. The World War II and World War I leveled a lot of these cities. The occupation by the Israelis of South Lebanon, they already destroyed these cities before multiple times. And they were rebuilt every time. Our people here in the region have refused to make our historical homelands disappear off the map. No matter how many times the colonists, the colonizers from Europe, from the day of the Crusades till the day, did this, we rebuilt. By the way, even Alexander the Great or Alexander the Macedonian leveled Tyre and Sur, Saida. After him, the Romans did the same. So these desperate acts by a dying colony are not going to change the course of history. And the people of South Lebanon will come back and rebuild every mosque, every church, every historical site, every house, and will stay when Israel ceases to exist. And we will be the ones that erase off the map the names of those Jewish colonies on our land that desecrated our land for the last 80 years. And we will return the names, the original names of those villages in Palestine and in South Lebanon that have been erased. So it's acts of desperation. And this messaging clearly by the Zionists is directed to their own populations. Their own population is watching as the empire that backs their colony is retreating, as they see that Islamic Republic of Iran and Hezbollah and Yemen, all of them reaching technological advancements that allow them to defeat this Jewish colony and to defeat its imperial masters. Those are clearly worries in the minds of these colonists, and Smotrich or Ben Gvir or Netanyahu talking about totally destroying these villages is directed just to those those colonists.
You mentioned that there is no active fight between Hezbollah and Israel with those sort of attacks. Huge sort of bombing in the southern part of it. I've seen yesterday one of the footage come out, and your understanding is that connected with the situation in Israel? We know that they're fighting. Benjamin Netanyahu is fighting in Israel. He wants to remain in his position in Israel. That's so important for him. How is that connected with what's going on in southern Lebanon with these bombings?
Those videoed explosions are mainly the Israelis going in and putting huge amounts of ammonia nitrates in some of the caves or some of the tunnels under the villages and blowing them up with these huge amounts of ammonium nitrates, not because that they couldn't have destroyed these, let's say, tunnels or what have you with lesser number of explosives, but all for the propaganda of having that explosion videoed and making everybody get scared inside Lebanon or get really sad about this destruction, and at the same time to give the colonists in Israel a feeling of some successes that their military is having. And that's because, of course, of the major losses that they suffered in the battlefield against Hezbollah, in the battlefield against Iran, in the battlefield against Yemen. And so these colonists, they over the last 2 years have seen one defeat after another. So this is the whole value of these propaganda videos of major explosions that don't change anything, right? These tunnels and or these bunkers or whatever can be built very fast. It's not a hard thing to do, and so the whole value of these videos is speaking to the colonists. And as you mentioned, the elections are coming soon in the colony. And because up until now, Netanyahu and his cabal haven't achieved any military victories against the axis of resistance, this is the attempt of Netanyahu to show some victory that is, of course, empty of reality. It doesn't change the battlefront at all.
Yesterday we had the Arba'in, the 40th day after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein in Iran and in Iraq as well. And right now we're getting back. Today we've learned that how Yemen is hitting Saudi tankers in the Bab el-Mandab, in the Red Sea. Those who are trying to pass through the Bab el-Mandab. And the other point would be the case of Iraq, Laith. And first, they said that they attacked Iraq because they thought that the drone attack came from Iraq hitting some targets in Saudi Arabia, oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. Then later on, they said, no, it wasn't us. It was the United States attacking them. And do you expect that there's something going to happen to Saudi Arabia in the coming days? Maybe a new attack from Iraq responding to what has happened? It wasn't just about the facilities, it's about the assassination of forces in Iraq and PMF, Popular Mobilization Forces, which are part of the Iraqi army, together with 5 Iranian trainers there who were, helping the Iraqi forces. Well, how do you expect that happening? What would come to that front between Iraq and Saudi Arabia?
I think it is 100% assured that the resistance in Iraq will retaliate for these Saudi and American attacks. They just had to wait for the millions of pilgrims that are in Iraq to disperse and go back home before they do so. They don't want to put the lives of these pilgrims at risk, especially that above and beyond what you mentioned in terms of the martyrs from the Iranian trainers and or the leadership of the PMF, especially that on top of that, there was pilgrims that were attacked on the border crossing between Iran and Iraq on their way to Najaf and Karbala. And there was an attack on pilgrims in Karbala. So those were war crimes, everything that the Americans and the Saudis and the whole imperialist and Zionist alliance is doing is war crimes. But these were, hateful attacks that are directed on civilians going to a religious ceremony. So this is some of the most filthiest kind of attack that you can conduct. And it brought to the minds of the Iraqi people the history of how the Saud family and the Wahhab cult, starting from the early 1800s, kept on doing raids and bandit attacks on the holy sites in Najaf and Karbala, and attacking pilgrims at the time and looting the gold and the gifts inside the shrines. This is, by the way, how the Saud family and the Wahhab cult made money before there was oil and gas discovered in the 1940s. So between the early 1800s until the 1940s, the major income source for the Saud and Wahhab cult is attacks on the holy sites in Iraq and the banditry and road, ambushes on pilgrims going to Najaf and Karbala. So this attacks on the pilgrims and on Karbala right now brought back those memories, and there is a debt to pay by the Saudi regime. And I think this is the chance for the Axis of Resistance in Iraq, the members of the Axis of Resistance of there, to get revenge for not only this current attack, but going all the way back to the early 1800s.
You mentioned how Hezbollah is thinking of the grand strategy of the whole region. It's all about Iran, Yemen, the acts of resistance in Iraq, all coming together and deciding about what would be the next step, what would be the next move on their part. And do you see, it seems that in the mind of Iranians, they're thinking of MOU plus. It means that they have mentioned in the first clause, in the first paragraph of MOU, it was on about Lebanon. Lebanon was mentioned 3 times, and on all fronts, they put that in the first clause. But they didn't mention Yemen, they didn't mention Palestine. And is that gonna, do you think, is that gonna change in the ongoing talks between the two sides? Because it seems that on the part of Iranians, without Yemen, without Palestine, there would be no deal between Iran and the United States.
I think it's very clear that the wise leadership in the Islamic Republic of Iran, starting with Mujtaba Khamenei, the Ayatollah, and the military leadership, they have a principled position that actually makes the Iranian government and the Iranian leadership legitimate in the eyes of its own people. And that is that principled position that you stand against the oppressors and you defend the oppressed whenever you can. And that's what has been happening. Iran could have been another Saudi or another Emirates if it just sold out the Palestinian people or sold out the Yemeni people or the Lebanese people. So this is not gonna, there's no question in my mind. I have no doubt at all that Iran as a nation and Iran as a leadership and as a military will go as far as they can to help in the liberation of Palestine and bring justice for the people of Lebanon and Yemen. And that's why actually there's so much love on a global scale for Iran and its leadership. So I doubt that there will be any change in the position of Iran. And also at the same time, I doubt that the Americans will accept anything. As we see, they keep on reneging on any agreement they do. They keep on thinking that they are still the #1 superpower, that as if they just came out of World War II, when in reality, as we see from the reports of the American military, they've ran out of all of their Prism and Atacam missiles, almost zero left in their stockpile. 80% of their air defenses are gone. And they've withdrawn all their air force from the whole of Western Asia. We just got a confirmation over the last 24 hours that the whole complete American Air Force has left Western Asia. So there's no way for the United States to conduct more war on Iran except through these long-range bombers. And that's not a sustainable way to conduct a war. And so I think in the next week, next 5-7 days, we will see the fronts reopening, but it will be Iraq taking the initiative. As we mentioned before, Iraq is going to be trying to get revenge for the attacks on it. And then we will have to see what Yemen does and what the Gulf vassals and Arab vassals will do, because I don't think the United States even will come to the aid of the Saudis once the Iraqis retaliate.